The following podcast is sponsored by Luminary Leaders, Sadat and Associates, and Connected Women of Influence. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the podcast. My name is Shelly Harrison, and you're listening to Speaker Central. On this episode, we talk about Let's Go Kick Some Glass with my special guest, Pattie Grimm. Welcome to this episode of Speaker Central, powered by Luminary Leaders, a speaker management and consulting company specializing in representing and booking thought leaders, military speakers, and experts across the country. I'm your host, Shelly Harrison. Each week, I open the conversation with my guest to unravel their perspective, solutions, and get into their mindset of business. We break down their expertise to give our audience actionable steps and content to apply in their own businesses. Catch all our episodes on your favorite podcast platform, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and plenty of places on LinkedIn in many, many different groups. And today, our intriguing topic, and I'm going to kind of surprise my guest with this, but I just love this. It's Let's Go Kick Some Glass. My special guest today is Pattie Grimm, and I'm so excited to bring Pattie on. Pattie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Shelly. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to being surprised. I love this because I want to have a conversation like with two girlfriends talking.
Yes, and that's what it's all about. And that's, I think, the way that things just come out, and it makes it more interesting for people to listen to. Don't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. Well, I would love to introduce you to our audience. So let me go ahead and read you this just to kind of let people know who you are, what you do, and that we have the honor of having you here today. So
awesome.
Yeah. With over 25 years of experience, Pattie is an empowerment expert for organizations, leaders, and women. Her presentations and interviews are empowering, educational, and engaging. Pattie was a senior leader for several global Fortune 100 companies. She owns a company focused on empowering women to be the best they can be. I love that. She is an author, speaker, podcast guest, like she is today with us, trainer, coach, and women's advocate. And we all know that us women need advocates. Pattie was recognized by Executive Women's Association, Who's Who in Women's Leadership, Women of Influence, and the state of California. So she has quite a bit of accolades there. She is the author of Quiet Women Never Changed History. Be strong, stand up and stand out. Let's go kick some glass. And she's got her book right there with that beautiful stiletto heel. I think it's a stiletto, is it? Oh, there's the red heel. How exciting. I love it. I love it. And we're going to talk a little bit about your book as we get into the interview, Pattie.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. But welcome again. I would love for you to kind of share, who is Pattie Grimm?
Oh, Patti Grimm. Wow. I am someone who has been an advocate for women back to my early banking days when I was one of the first women vice presidents for a big California bank. And so I started doing women's conferences. We didn't call them empowerment conferences back then. Back in the late, in the 90s. I mean, a long time ago, which will age me a little bit, but that's okay. With that comes maturity and wisdom, I'm told. So I'm trying to get to the wisdom part.
We have it now.
We have it now.
We do.
Right, it shows. And so I started doing these conferences for women way back then, and I've just always been passionate about this. And so when I was at Microsoft, I was there for 15 years, and I had 14 amazing years with the organization. I had one year when I went from rock star to rock bottom, where I literally, I did the crash and burn from the top of the corporate ladder, fell all the way to the bottom, and I had to pick myself back up again. And so because of that, I got so inspired about helping other women avoid the kind of fall that I had. I recovered and became stronger and stronger than ever. But it sent me on this mission to go find out, what do strong, confident, empowered women do? And I found these 5 things, and I put it into my book. I interviewed over 3 years, over 3,200 people about what makes us
3,200 people.
3,200
Wow.
people and
Wow.
what makes a
That's a
successful
lot of
leader.
people to interview.
That's a lot of people. You know
A
what
lot of
happened, though?
different varieties too, I'm sure.
Men and women. And one of the questions was, is there a difference between a man and woman leader? Which 87% people said yes. And if so, what? And so it was and I collected all these amazing best practices. So all that went into the book and the speaking that I do now. Majority of it is around women and girls, about empowering women and girls to be the best they can be in any endeavor they choose.
Oh, wow. And you said something earlier that I had no idea that we have this in common, but you said that you worked for a California bank. And I don't know if you know this, but I was an executive in the banking industry too for 26 years.
Yeah.
So
I was there for 15, and then I left, started my own company the first time, and then got hired by Microsoft in 1998. So I was vice president of customer and people excellence, some crazy job they invented for me.
Oh, but and I'm sure you did a phenomenal job with it.
Yeah. So it's been something I've been so passionate about. And then lately, when you say women kicking glass, we still have to kick that glass ceiling. We are still underserved, underpaid, and underrepresented in government, in healthcare, in business today. We still have to kick that glass ceiling.
We do.
Women's pay went up 1% in the last decade.
That's such a low number,
And women still earn between 64 cents and 79 cents for the same job where a man earns $1. And that depends on your color. People of color are earning a whole lot less. And, we're still fighting for our rights. There's still 13 states today in the U.S. that have not passed the Equal Rights Amendment from the 1970s. 13 states.
Wow.
I encourage your listeners, go online, look up the 13 states that haven't passed it. If you live in one of those states, I want you to call your congressman, your congresswoman, your senator, your governor, and tell them to pass this law to give women access to equal pay.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, Pattie, because that is such a hot topic. And I think, people within those states, they can absolutely make a difference. And like you said, go to the local Congress people yes, definitely. Because that's something that, in today's world, it's mind boggling why that's still not. Yeah.
We talk about diversity. We talk about diversity, equality, and inclusion. And for me, diversity is being invited to the meeting. Equality is having a seat at the table. Inclusion is having a voice at the table. And being in that senior role that you and I were in. Yes.
And that's a prime example. And, I think of a book that was written by I can't even think of her name because I'm on the spot here, but Lean In with the
Sheryl Sandberg. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. Sheryl Sandberg. Yeah. She was amazing. And I read the book and I thought, gosh, for her to have that position, like you said, diversity and inclusion, and you described exactly what she kicked some glass.
Yeah. And we all need to really kick that glass, and we need men's help too, because
the support of men.
Some research shows that women who have men mentors in their career earn 13% more.
Wow. Well, my husband support. Oh no, it is. And I was going to say, my husband supports me a lot, so I'm wondering if I'm getting that extra 13%.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I had a couple of amazing mentors in my career. One in banking, and he now lives across the street from me in another development. I'm out in Palm Springs area. He literally lives in the development across the street from us. And then two that I had when I worked for Microsoft. These two British gentlemen that did so much for my career. They didn't just mentor me; they sponsored me.
Wow. Very early on in your career, then, right?
Very early on in my career.
Yeah. And that, I think, really, when it's a woman who's getting that kind of support from a man, it resonates with the rest of the organization or team, where people see that this is happening, and it's rare. It is. It's really rare.
And what we're talking about here in terms of for women, we could apply some of the same techniques to people of color. So you could say the same thing. We need to be more inclusive of them. They need to have a higher access to higher paying jobs. They need to have higher visibility. They need better sponsors. We need to look at all of our HR policies, and I think just throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
Let's just start over.
I know. Gosh, wouldn't that be nice? If we could just rewind and just really kind of do things differently, and just have that equality piece across the board.
Yeah, it's so important. So when you said kicking glass, I was like, yay!
One of your favorite topics.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Pattie, I like to ask this question of all my guests, and I'm going to surprise you with it, and I'd like you to fill in the blank. So in 2020, I'm blown away how my company, and then fill in the blank, please.
How quickly my company and other companies have literally pivoted on a dime.
Oh,
From overnight, from going from people coming into a formal office every day to all of a sudden finding out, and they're finding out through research. Microsoft just did another study recently that found out that people who are working remotely are actually being more productive. They're not traveling to work for a half hour each way or an hour or 2 hours, whatever it happens to be. And they're showing that people are being more productive. Now they need that balance. They need to come back to the workplace to be able to see people and interact with people, not just on Zoom, but they're finding that how quickly companies were able to pivot. And I read an article that said, in some places we've been trying to get people to adopt new technologies for decades. And healthcare is one of them. They've been trying to get people to use telemedicine to help reduce the cost of healthcare and still get quality healthcare by talking to a doctor on Zoom or some other means. And they could not get people to adopt to it. And now people won't go back to see their regular doctor because they prefer the Zoom approach. So I think how quickly people were able to adapt and be flexible. Yeah. And then I'm amazed at how resilient people are being, how agile they are, and how they're able to develop more grit and determination and tenacity just to figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah. And that's such, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I think a lot of companies, where we're so used to doing things the way that we used to be doing them, right? And now that all of these, companies and organizations, everybody's having to pivot and do something different and probably a little more uncomfortable than they were used to doing. Even people working from home, like you pointed out, with Microsoft coming out with that study. 10 years ago, I could not even imagine working from home, where I think I'd be doing laundry, I'd be cleaning, whatever. And then I get, do a little productivity with my work or whatever. But now it's like, I am, just so focused on productivity, and I do run my company from home. And I'm not sure about you, but I would imagine you probably can say the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And just even with like school children, being able to be on schedule. My sister has 2 young children. My niece just went off to SMU for her first year of college, but she still has 2 young kids at home. And they're on Zoom. I mean, they're going back to school part-time in person, like every other day. So there's less kids in the classrooms. And so, but they're able to pivot, and they're on their Zoom calls, and they're taking their breaks, and they're doing the things they need to do. And so I was scheduled to speak at the Women in Technology International Summit.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that summit.
Which was scheduled for, I think, March or April, and it got canceled. But in June, we did it virtually, and it went flawlessly.
Wow. Yeah, and that goes to show, I mean, and you as a speaker, where you get out and you travel and you go to different conferences probably every other week. Now it's, we're showing that speakers you can be at really any conference because it's all virtual, and here you are, you don't have to travel, you don't have all the expenses or, the time delays or any of that. So really it's, people are saying too, that being in person has a different, it's a different experience, but really I think that if we all just, maybe even connect on a deeper level after the event, that's where we can have that, that real, that kind of that personalized one-on-one time where we can feel a little more, comfortable with whoever it is that, that we've met at an event or whatnot online.
Yeah. And so when you're doing, when you're thinking about putting together things in the future and doing speaking or events and those kind of things. Yeah. I mean, I've traveled the world. I lived in Singapore for Microsoft and ran the Asia Pacific Customer Partner Experience team, living in Singapore for 3 years, and I've traveled the world. I've been on every country you can imagine I've been to or traveled to and spoken at or done workshops. But the ability to be able to, when you're trying to share content or information, being able to do that virtually. And then when you get together is when you do the human interaction. That's when you do the maybe practice sessions or role plays or discussions, or, you have a brainstorming session or something where you're there in person, it gives greater value to that in-person event than in the past when we sort of just took those things for granted.
Yeah, that's so true. Yes, yeah. I agree. How would you describe yourself if someone just met you for the first time?
Somewhat crazy.
Crazy.
I've been called passionate, persistent Pattie my whole life. Passionate, persistent Pattie. I was described one time as a combination of a pit bull and a golden retriever.
Oh, that's a nice combination. Different, right?
Right, because I have the love and the compassion and the caring and developing of people, but I have the ability to just put my head down and just get things done. It's like I'm can be like a bull in a china shop sometimes. And I had an assistant one time, and she sort of had this signal for me, and she'd walk by one day, and we always talked about bringing grace or grit to work that day.
Oh.
And she'd come by my office one day, and she says, "I think you left grace at home."
Oh, so that day you had grit.
That day I had a lot of grit and determination, and I was the pit bull, and I needed to find my golden retriever.
Yeah. You know what? Sometimes though, it's a good balance, right? I think we need to be, I'm not sure if you're familiar with kind of like selling and color where, people.
I've taught and done DISC and strength profile and Myers-Briggs and insights and every one of them. I've done all of them. And I love them all.
So you're familiar with the different colors, like, red is like that bull in the china shop, right? Yep. Or, and then the green and all those different colors. Yep. And I think a lot of people, if they have kind of a combination of both where they could still be firm, but, in the same token, be that golden retriever, I think that's a good medium, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And then also too, you know your strengths. I'm part of having high emotional intelligence and doing those kind of things. Every team I ever managed, and even teams I was part of, we always did some kind of fun team building exercise with DISC using the colors, and I use birds. So I ask people, and it's in my book, about the first principle of being a strong woman leader is play to your strengths. So figuring out what your strengths are. So I ask people to think about, are you an eagle, a peacock, a dove, or an owl? Now, obviously the eagle is think about what an eagle is in nature, but an eagle is the red. They are dominant, they're aggressive, they're direct and task focused, right? Yeah. The peacocks are colorful and fun and creative and engaging. They're still very direct with people, but they're more people focused. And then your doves are people focused and more indirect. So they will ask versus tell. And then the owls are the ones that are very organized, structured, planning. They're very task oriented and very indirect.
That's a different way of seeing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you ask an eagle or a peacock, because they're direct, where do you want to go for dinner tonight? They'll say, let's go to Thai food. If you ask the owl and the dove, who are indirect, where do you want to go for dinner tonight? They'll say, I don't know. Where do you want to go? Or the owl is looking up the Yelp interviews.
I just had a visual of that. But that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
If you're people focused and you're going to hire someone for your team, you're going to focus on, does the person fit the team, right? Are they going to gel? If you're the eagles and the owls that are more task focused, you're going to focus on their credentials, their background, their certifications, where they go to school, what's their grade point average, how long have they been at their job. So it's different ways of looking at those strengths. And the best teams are made up of people that have very different strengths.
Yes. And I think they finally realize, I think a lot of companies now, because people are not staying in their positions as long as they used to. I mean, think about it. When we were in the banking industry, I mean, I know there were in fact, there are still some dinosaurs there that stayed on long after I left. And when I look back and I think, people are not they don't stay at a position that long anymore, probably for the last 7 or 8 years. And I think it's more the younger generation. Wouldn't you agree that that's kind of the, what's happening?
Yeah, it depends on the pace of the industry you're in. I think I was at Microsoft 15 years, and I think I had 14 jobs. But it was all kind of moving up and moving sideways in different ways of throughout the career. In banking, very much so. It's very, very stable and very much, my father thought I was crazy. when I was a VP at 28 and I quit working for the bank to go start my own company. My dad thought I was insane.
Gosh. Yeah. Well, he's probably saw you as this, very dedicated and loyal. And, I mean, when you're in banking, you have a lot of stability. And going from that to being an entrepreneur, that is a big difference.
That's a big,
it really is, because that's
big,
a risk.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage. And I tell people, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the learned ability to work through fear to get to the other side.
That's we'll have to put that in the show notes, because I think that is something that is very true. And you have to have the grit too, right?
Yeah, the grit. I mean, determination. I mean, I love the work by Dr. Susan David. And if you get a chance, watch her YouTube video, her TED Talk called Emotional Agility, Embrace Change and Thrive. Her work's phenomenal on having emotional agility, because we all need to have that resiliency and ability to bounce back. Yeah. But her work on emotional agility is being able to look at the world and circumstances with eyes wide open, to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly, and learn from all of them. And don't try and push the bad down too quick, because you'll never grow from that. Right. So how to really embrace that, and then having the determination and grit to get through to the other side.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to watch that. And say the name again. Who was that?
Dr. Susan David.
Susan David.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's called Emotional Agility. She's from South Africa. She's phenomenal. One of my favorite lines of hers, she says in the video, and I've kind of used it a bit from time to time, is that if you want your life to be completely flat, like no ups, no downs, no good, no bad, no ugly, you just kind of want to sail along in life, you have dead people's goals. Oh. Because in healthcare, when your heartbeat is gone, you don't have an up or a down anymore.
Yeah, it's a flat line.
It's a flatliner.
Yeah.
Right? And fear feels the same in the body as excitement. And what happens in your mind and your body reacts the same way to fear or excitement over taking a new job or buying a new house or having your first kid or doing your first presentation on Zoom. That excitement feels just like fear. Yeah. So you got to work through it.
That makes sense. I'll have to watch it, because I love watching YouTube. There are a lot of inspirational people out there. I know there's a few of them that I follow too. Yeah.
I follow her on LinkedIn a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, TED Talks, actually, not YouTube. I said YouTube, TED Talks.
TED Talks, yeah. There's brilliant TED Talks out there.
Oh, there are. There definitely are. And we're going to take a quick commercial break. I'd like to let our audience know that today we are talking with Pattie Grimm. And Pattie Grimm she's an author, a speaker, and she owns her own training and development company. And we'd like to also thank our sponsors. We have our sponsors, Whaaaat and Associates, Connected Women of Influence, and Luminary Leaders. And back to Pattie. So Pattie, how would you describe your best prospect to work with?
Best prospect for me to work with is a company or an organization that is really interested in helping women and minorities break the glass ceiling. Companies that are willing to invest in people, because a recent IBM study just came out that said 79% of the companies that say they're doing diversity and inclusion, helping women be empowered and grow, and helping people of color grow as well, they're only paying lip service to it. They might put together an employee resource group and give them a little bit of money to have a few lunches and things, but they're not putting it into the business of the organization. So I deliver and do workshops for women and teams about how to be great team players, how to include people. I do workshops and webinars, speeches and conferences for all those kind of things. And also on the leadership side about how to be strong, giving leaders. My second book I'm kind of working on and been noodling around for years. It's called When They Rise, You Do Not Fall.
Rise. Oh, when they
rise, you do not fall. How to create inclusive workplaces for all.
Wow. So this book you're writing, when is it going to be ready?
I don't know.
You don't know. So it's one of those things where it's in your head,
it's probably going to be another 6 months or so before I finish this one out, because I'm still doing I like to have it research based, but then provide in my Quiet Women Never Change history, out of all that research and all those interviews, I narrowed it down to these 5 things that all women can do. And then I teach workshops and webinars on those 5 things.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have you back when your book launches. So just
The next
let's
one,
put
yeah.
that. Yep. Let's put that on the calendar. And then, as far as share with us how you came up with your first book title.
Um, uh, so it's actually a quote from Madame Curie, from Marie Curie, who obviously was a doctor way ahead of her time. There were very few doctors, let alone women doctors back then, and she died from the disease she was trying to cure. And I saw the quote on a friend's office one day in Chicago when I was working for Microsoft.
Yeah.
And she was this amazing, strong, stately, beautiful, talented woman. And I saw this quote and it stuck with me all these years. And then the be strong, stand up, stand out part of it came from the 5 principles I found out about what great women do. So be strong, which is playing to your strengths, being able to stand up by having a personal leadership vision to stand on. And I help people do that in the book, or I've got exercises for that. Be able to stand out by being more valuable, being more visible, being more vocal. To put yourself number 1 on your things to do list, because you can't pour from an empty teacup. If you don't have self-esteem,
that's a good analogy. Yeah,
you can't pour from an empty cup of coffee or tea.
Yeah, that's
true. They say on the airlines, put your mask on first. You have to take care of yourself before you can take care of your family or your team. And then the last one is pay it forward to the next generation of women leaders and men, because we owe our next generation, we owe them a better place.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I really appreciate that you are research driven, because I think it's important to have a purpose, and like your book, with the way that you've just described how you came up with the name, that's very purpose driven, when you really stop and think about it. And I believe that you have a special offer too to mention about your book.
I do. So if people want to email me at pattiegrimmlive.com, and that's PattiGrimm@live.com, and this will be in the show notes. I can send you a link, or you can go to www.womenkickingglass.com/book, BOOK, and you can get a copy of my book for only $10. That includes $200 in free bonuses, including a video training of me walking through those 5 ways in detail, and how to write your personal leadership vision, which every woman should do. You should have a purpose and write that vision statement. And also in the U.S., it's free shipping and handling. Outside the U.S., you can either pay for shipping and handling or get the book on Amazon in Kindle.
That's fantastic, Pattie. Thank you for mentioning that. We'll make sure that's in the show notes, because that's a great offer, especially with the, they buy the book and they get the $200 worth of, other valuable items that you have provided.
You get a vision roadmap, how to write your personal vision, and you get a personal strength accelerator.
That's a great deal. So we'll make sure that our audience knows that. That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing.
And then contact me for your women's groups or your company who really want to make a difference in the diversity, equality, and inclusion in your organization, and working with leaders about what they need to do to change their behavior, what men can do. Right now, men are feeling fairly defensive. Because they feel like they've been attacked by Me Too and then Black Lives Matter and all these things coming out. And so when you get attacked, you back into a corner. So men are afraid to mentor women and people of color. They're afraid to take them to lunch or dinner. And we need them to reach out and mentor and sponsor these people. Yeah.
Yes. Very good. Thank you for mentioning that. And, I met you, I think, I know that we had a conversation. It had to have been at least 2 years ago. And I think you were getting ready to go on stage at that point. And that's when we were back to the live days, right?
Back to the live days.
Back to the live days.
Yep.
Yeah. So how has your company pivoted? You mentioned early on in the interview that you are really kind of blown away how companies and organizations have really, pivoted fairly quickly. So share with our audience what you've done, not only to help your company pivot, but also what you've done to help your clients pivot.
Yeah, I think the thing I'm doing is spending a lot more time with them, showing them how they can create this environment that's inclusive for all. And whether that be through honest conversations on Zoom videos, because we can't do things face to face at the moment. Getting leaders to open up and have the courage to be authentic and say, this has been hard for me too. Talking to leaders about things like when they say things like, when we get back to work, Now, when you've been working at home and sharing your office with your significant other, or homeschooling your children, or taking care of an elderly parent, and you're working your tail off, and your CEO says things like, when we get back to work, what you hear is, don't you think I've been working all this time? Instead of saying, when we get back to the workplace.
That's powerful. That is
or
powerful.
Even just being so aware of what they say.
Yeah.
And being able to point out to them. I sit in on a lot of leadership meetings where I'm sort of the fly on the wall. And afterwards, the leaders will ask me, well, how did it go? And I always start first with asking them, well, what do you think you did well? And what do you think you would do differently? And then many cases I'll say to them, you know, when you said, oh, this is just child's play. You just called your staff childish. Yeah. When you say things like, this isn't rocket science, you've just now called them dumb.
Isn't that crazy though, how just one word or two paired words can make that much of a difference? Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And people are hypersensitive right now. And so I want leaders to be authentic and have the courage to say, this has been really hard for me and my family too. Oh, yeah. And then have the compassion. I heard one of the best ways for bringing people back to the workplace is to allow them to have time and space to reconnect and communicate and be compassionate and patient. So that makes sense because, you know, once they come back, they have to hit the ground running, right? Working, where they're going to get back and, you know, they're going to go right back to their desk, but they really need that connection piece. They need to, you know, kind of regroup and, you know, get back that team feeling. Yeah. Once we can even if you have to do it social distancing with a mask, once you get people back into the workplace, throw a party. Yeah, have a team building, something. Have a potluck and hire me. I'll come do a really fun disc session, and we'll have a blast. And we'll laugh. We will learn from each other, and we'll learn how to be better people. Oh, there you go. That would be ideal, right? Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome, Pattie. You know, I would love to, because we're kind of coming to the end of the time that we have here, and I would love for you to share. I mean, you've given us quite a few nuggets. Share with us one last thing that you feel during COVID-19 that companies can do now to make a difference when they come out of this, whenever that is, whenever we get back to the workplace or back to our company, the way that it was, you know, the new normal. Can you leave us with one nugget? Yeah, it's something a friend of mine taught me, Colonel Deb Lewis. She was a colonel in the Army. She literally was one of the first women to graduate from West Point and had a 35-year military career. She was a colonel by the time she retired. Now living in Hawaii with her husband, right? Incredible woman. And I have several other friends and military women. Eldana Fernandez Lewis, who's amazing. I know Eldana. Yeah. Jody Greer, who's amazing. I think we know her as well. Yeah. They talk about after action reviews. And I want companies to use this not just in COVID, but use it after every significant event. Literally do an after action review. Ask yourself what happened. What did we learn from it? When things didn't go well, what would we do differently to create a different result? If things did go well, what would we do again so we continue to learn from it? So let's not forget what we just went through. Let's figure out what worked, what didn't work, and how we're going to get stronger and better in the future, because the next wave of change is going to happen regardless of even once COVID is over and we're all back to work, something new is going to come along and change the world again. So let's just get ready for it. I know. And, you know, it just reminded me because, you know, this episode will obviously air after 9/11. But you think of the world back on the date of 9/11 and, you know, that inclusiveness that Americans had during that time, after that time. And, you know, we've gone so much longer than one day, but look at the impact of both events that happen in this world. And like you said, they're going to continue to happen. And, you know, this in COVID-19, probably 3 years from now, we'll look back and we'll say, oh yeah, we had to wear masks, you know, and we don't want to minimize what happened, but boy, has it changed the world. You know, we want to learn from it. Zig Ziglar, one of the really famous sales coaches guy that's been around for decades. I think he finally passed away. He has two definitions for fear. It is face everything and run,
Face everything and run. Okay.
Or face everything and rise.
Face everything and rise. And I think I'd rather do that.
Yeah, I want people to rise from this event, like rising,
Yeah.
Phoenix rising out of the ashes. Let's rise out of this event. And I keep saying, I want the world to be a better place because our children deserve that.
Oh, they do. They absolutely do. And, Pattie, it's been wonderful having you on the show today.
It's been
and
fun.
Yes, I just love everything that you've shared. And, I get to, on a deeper level, I get to, to get to know you better. And I'm excited that, that you're writing your second book now. And we look forward to having you back on the show then when your second book comes out. And, thank you for being on the show. And to our listeners and our followers, thank you for being here with us for Speaker Central. We interview CEOs of companies, our sponsors, our collaborative partners, and speakers across the country like Pattie, who are just amazing. So with that, subscribe. We're on many, many channels, podcast channels, as well as YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So to our audience and to Pattie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pattie. Hey there, did you enjoy the episode? If you did, subscribe to Speaker Central.